Are you deep into Mentor Roulette? Would you like to optimize your job and gear around doing Mentor Roulette to make it easier, or perhaps, possibly, faster? Then you may just have come to the right place. In every role between tank, healer and DPS, there are stronger choices than others, obviously. And, at least in my opinion, having greater utility and capacity to carry defensively is the most valuable trait in Mentor Roulette. The duties that you can get in Mentor Roulette never ever have hardened rages that are strict enough that the reason you're wiping is thanks to the hardened rage on its own. It is almost certainly thanks to something else going wrong. Is there a way to make that easier? Well, to approach that, let's talk about each role and how to optimize it for Mentor Roulette to make the most of it, going over both which job would be the strongest choice and what stats, and by extension what gear would be the strongest choice, and lead to not the fastest clearing builds, but the most reliable and consistently clearing builds. Let's start with tanks, and more precisely, tank jobs. Initially, the obvious answer is Warrior, duh. However, due to Warrior getting this god tier self-sustain at level 56, and furthermore having a somewhat awkward Berserk related burst until they get inner release at 70, it isn't as clear cut. In the lower level ranges of 1 to 55, you can, in the kind of group context that Mentor Roulette entails, overcome most of the self-healing issues any tank might have with the use of healing potions. So if those are brought, obviously recommended for a guide like this, the greater concern is the Berserk awkwardness. If you can overcome that, then Warrior is an excellent choice. That said, my recommended tank for optimal Mentor Roulette consistency is Gunbreaker. They have built-in self-healing even in Sastasha if needed, and get a further boost with Aurora at 45, making it a safer choice for most 1 to 50 content you might land in. The fact Gunbreaker's extra cooldown camouflage actually reduces damage taken compared to Warrior's Thrill of Battle further helps with this too. Gunbreaker's low-level rotation being just a much simpler version of their high-level rotation also makes it much easier to adjust to the various different level ranges you might land in, where Warrior has their super low levels of just whatever 1 to 3 combos they can get in Berserk, then suddenly 1 step 3 into Inner Beasts, then a range where you maintain Surging Tempest with an AoE combo, and then 3 Fell Cleaves. And then Inner Release, in an ironic twist, is what brings order. For the remaining tanks, the reason I'm not recommending Paladin is because of its lack of easy self-healing at most levels, which puts it at a severe disadvantage to the other tanks for most of the content you should expect to see in Mentor Roulette. Dark Knight is actually surprisingly comparable to Warrior in lower levels, even sporting a simpler rotation with similar damage. Dark Knight even gets Abyssal Drain at the same level Warrior gets Raw Intuition, which makes it a lot more competitive here than it has been in the past, considering the giant healing buff Abyssal Drain got in 7.1. However, I still would rank Warrior higher than Dark Knight in this consistency measure, although I do think Dark Knight is much closer to both Warrior and Gunbreaker than Paladin is, thanks to those Abyssal Drain buffs, not to mention Dark Mind buffs. I think if you bring potions and use the gear recommendations here, only Paladin is likely to stand out as a bit less consistent among the four. Speaking of gear recommendations, normally we always optimize for damage, which tends to be crit, then determination and direct hit, then tenacity, with skill speed featuring as needed. However, all content in Mentor Roulette is at a difficulty where if you even see a hardened rage, it suggests something else is going totally wrong. As such, if you want to optimize consistency in your runs, try and imagine what kind of stats you would want if you were completely alone, but assume that somehow all DPS checks are always met. Let me start by saying that if you land in a level 100 duty, or maybe just a Dawntrail duty, it is good to have your normal tank gear ready to swap to, as this gear set is meant to play around item level syncing. Tenacity is by far the most effective stat at making you capable of overcoming impossible odds defensively. And after that, simply because of how it scales, critical hit will be the best stat at increasing your self-healing capability, on average. And of course also your damage output. In the case of For example, a relic weapon, you could prioritize determination 3rd or just evenly split it between all the stats on a Shadowbringer's relic, as that will still max out everything when synced down to a relatively high level. If you want a certain GCD, try to fit skill speed on pieces instead of crit to keep tenacity as high as possible. As the purpose of this set is to optimize it around getting synced down, you can assume materia slots are irrelevant as those turn off when you get synced down anyway. I have a video explaining this in more detail in the description. The target is to find as many pieces of equipment with both crit and tenacity on it, since as you sync down to lower level content, both stats will effectively max out anyway. If we limit the range to at worst item level around 660, maybe 665 equipment, this maxing out of stats detail will hold completely or mostly true up to around level 86 duties. For an exact gear set suggestion, for your weapon, aim for relic weapon if you can, and for Endwalker relics, put tenacity and crit as the primary stats and determination as the 3rd. Skill speed replaces determination but can push crit to the 3rd stat if you need more skill speed. If you cannot get a relic, Warrior's second best option is the Neo Kingdom War Axe bought with farmable tomestones at the moment. For Gunbreaker, the Zormor Gunblade from Walker Zormor is your best option. For Paladin, use the level 96 crafted titanium gold falchion. For Dark Knight, use the Dawntrail artifact weapon, Maleficus. Moving on to armor, I will avoid current Savage Raid pieces for accessibility reasons. Maybe you're not a Savage Raider. For helmets, your best options are the helmet from the first Dawntrail Alliance raid, the helmet from the new Ueawata Field Station dungeon, and the Walker Zormor helmet, in that order. For chest, you can use the Quetzali Mail weekly tome gear for the first raid tier, or the first crafted set for Dawntrail. For gloves, the Neo Kingdom gloves is a solid choice. Pants, your only choice without going below item level 660 is the first Alliance raid pants. For boots, get the first crafted boots of Dawntrail. For earrings, your best option is the Eukanite earrings of Fending, which are only item level 655, but should be close enough that it doesn't matter. Remember, high quality. For the necklace, get the one from the normal version of the first raid tier. For the bracelet, Neo Kingdom Bangles of Fending is an easy to get option. For the rings, get the one from Ueawata Field Station and the one from Skydeep Shinolti. At level 86, this set would equate to around 23.6% critical hit chance and 58.6% critical hit damage and healing, as well as 10.4% bonus damage and healing, as well as 18.5% damage reduction from tenacity. Yes, this is going to be slightly less damage than focusing determination instead, and since materia turns off when synced down, direct hit was never an option anyway. This means that you have what amounts to almost the same effect as a permanent rampart. And here's the thing, you can use rampart on top of that. Now, you might be thinking, why does stacking tenacity matter? This allows you to hold on if your healer's not very good, enabling you to perform pulls you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Similarly, if your DPS players are a bit weak, you can handle fights going over long much more easily due to taking less damage. Yes, thanks to your tenacity gear, you will also do very slightly less damage. But I would argue that damage reduction helps stabilize more than the slightly higher damage from determination would help with clear speed. And the best part is that if you actually do run into a situation where you need more damage, you can always switch to your normal gear in case that does fare better. In the case of consumables, I recommend grabbing some of every type of healing potion, although high potions specifically are objectively better than regular potions, and hyper potions are objectively better than super potions. The logic being that due to the combination of different percentage healing, max thresholds, and different cooldowns, there are specific HP ranges where each potion is optimal. For even more optimization, bring things like spine drops in case you get a removable paralysis debuff and so on. If you want to go even harder than that, the best food you could get would be tacos al pastor, although you could use lobster bisque for a slightly higher cap. But then to actually make use of that, you would need to replace several pieces with tenacity determination pieces instead. How many ultimately depends on how far down you get synced, so maybe just stick to tacos al pastor. Although I find it unlikely you would be constantly using buff food for Mentor Roulettes anyway. Nice to have when you land in an extreme though. In summary, in terms of quality, order of tank jobs is Gunbreaker, then Warrior, then Dark Knight, and then a bit more distant is Paladin. All four will work though, obviously. Bring high potions, mega potions, X potions, max potions, and hyper potions. Also, bring spine drops and other debuff removal items as needed. Tacos al pasta is the best buff food for this strategy as of right now. Maximize your stats in the priority of tenacity, then crit, then determination. Try to aim for no lower than item level 660 equipment for this if possible, and take note that this strategy does not have maximum power and duties above level 86. You simply play your tank like you would normally. And with that, let's move on to the Mentor Carry Healer build. For jobs, Astrologian is certainly the more safe pick among the pure healers, due to how much more effective it is in lower level content compared to White Mage. At higher level, Astrologian having less awkwardness thanks to not having an AoE stun attached to their AoE attack also helps. However, in terms of pushing it to the limit, barrier healers tend to have a greater advantage at going beyond what should be possible due to their easy access to, well, barriers. I would say in your average duty, Sage has a slight advantage due to more regular access to damage reduction than Scholar. However, Scholar is stronger in super low level content and does not fall off at higher content. Having options like crit load deploy also means Scholar has greater access to pushing the limits of what's possible. For gear, healers are, simply put, a lot easier to equip. The only stat that does not help you with keeping your team alive is direct hit, but that is inaccessible without materia anyway. Optimally, aim for gear with crit on it, and then mix it with determination and spell speed after preference. Remember, unless you get like late Endwalker stuff or Dawntrail stuff, gear all the way down to item level 660 is useful. Due to a greater emphasis on preference, I won't highlight specific pieces, but simply say, make sure all of your pieces have crit on them. If you want to go the extra mile, I would recommend finding pieces with crit and piety for every equipment slot. Absurd? But hear me out. As well as pieces with crit determination or crit spell speed after preference. Why piety? Sometimes in, say, a Realm Reborn extremes, your capacity to carry as a healer is down to having an unreasonable amount of MP, which means piety can turn around and become amazing. However, I don't recommend wearing this kind of gear unless you need it. But by having all the pieces at hand, you can adjust your piety up and down as you need, which can be immensely helpful. For food, in case you use it, you can almost certainly use whatever food you might be using at max level anyway, whether it is pineapple orange jelly or moqueco or whatever. For consumables, bringing potions just like tanks isn't a bad idea, although you rarely will need them. Super Ethers, on the other hand, can be amazing for MP recovery, so those might also be handy to bring. For other consumables, specifically Echo Drops are incredibly handy when you land in the occasional duty with a silence, such as, surprise, Bravelock's Longstop. This can also be handy for Dark Knights, of course, since Unleash is a spell. So in summary, in terms of highest quality carry ranked from the top, we have Scholar, Sage, Astrologian with a more distant White Mage. To be fair, in certain duties, Astrologian is an undisputed first place. However, this is mainly in content where there is less need for carrying capacity, and cases like when your co-healers really poor in A Realm Reborn extremes. And in that level range, a pure healer can often also be better at just keeping a lot of players alive. So it can be a bit hard to choose since you just might not be able to cover everything. However, both Sage and Scholar have amazingly effective tools for these extremes, if you can at least assume your co-healers playing the game. For gear, maximize crit, then determination and spell speed as preferred. Remember, materia doesn't work anyway. Consider bringing piety gear for every slot so you can heavily emphasize it in case you need it. For food, use whatever you normally use at max level. Make sure to bring Super Ethers and Echo Drops. And finally for DPS. The by far most capable of doing some carrying are jobs with access to healing and raise, which ultimately cuts our pool of options down to just Red Mage and Summoner. Red Mage is the only one with a generally relevant heal, but Summoner is the only one that is likely to have a raise at all in most of the hard content you will likely face. To give them both a fair shake, as they both have their advantages and disadvantages, I will cover both. With a slightly greater emphasis on Red Mage, the first set is to simply prioritize crit and determination. Why? Because direct hit does not increase your healing output. Arguably, you will almost certainly do just fine with just whatever gear you have. You could even use slightly lower item level pieces with better stat distributions than what you have to further optimize. But if your team actually needs your heals, then avoiding direct hit on whatever gear you end up using is best. For a maximum crit determination set, most Dawntrail weapons should work. The Neo Kingdom Hat of Casting, Yueyawata Robe of Casting, Neo Kingdom Armlets of Casting, Dawntrail Tier 1 Crafted Pants, Level 96 Crafted Boots, Vanguard Earrings, Neo Kingdom Necklace, Yueyawata Bracelet, Quetzali Ring of Casting, and the Vanguard Ring of Casting. Moqueco for food is excellent as it covers both of the stats you want. Again, you will probably be fine with whatever gear you have unless for some reason you need to heal a ton with the Cure or something. This set also helps for Summoner since Summoner has more regular instances of healing at higher levels, although it would need an item or two with speed on it for that 2.48 or faster GCD. However, this is also mostly relevant at really high levels, so there's limited times where it is actually helpful while it is fully synced. And there is also one more option specifically for a Realm Reborn summoners that might get a bit stupid. While Summoner has raise in all relevant duty content aside from like a couple guild tests, although I can't imagine you'd need it there, Physic is, nicely put, not good as soon as you start going past level 49, especially because you stop wearing gear with Mind on it. The problem is that even if gear wasn't roll locked, you would be getting Mind instead of Intelligence, meaning your damage would drop instead. However, there is something you can do. The Field Commander armor set, acquired through PvP by accumulating victories in Seal Rock Seas, comes with every attribute on it, meaning Strength, Dexterity, Vitality, Intelligence, and Mind. To be precise, this set, while requiring level 60, has enough of each of these attributes to max out the stats when synced down to item level 130, which is what you work with at level 50. This set would effectively sacrifice secondary stats like crit, speed, and determination to make Physic better and simultaneously making auto attacks more impactful. If things get really dire, you could also make use of the fact that the level 60 accessories, both from Poetics and from Alexandra Savage, are role agnostic, so you can simply choose to wear the healing accessories to increase Physic healing further. Now, all of these pieces are all absolutely absurd, and using them on the regs seems kind of memey to be fair. However, being able to enable Physic to do something should you find yourself in a duty where it would actually help more than having maximum damage is pretty handy. Essentially, having these armor pieces, as many as you may have unlocked, as well as Heavensward healer accessories to enable you to adjust your stats more towards healing when it happens. This would mainly matter in a Realm Reborn extremes. For duties above level 50, this entire idea extremely quickly drops off in usefulness. In summary, for your DPS job preference, I highly recommend choosing a job with a raise, meaning Summoner or Red Mage. Summoner is slightly preferred because it has raise in all relevant content, while Red Mage is an amazing choice in duties where it has raise. Try to avoid directed in favor of more crit and determination, as these stats actually help with defensive things like healing, but only do this if you actually need this. Summoners can also use an extremely janky set at specifically level 50 or below to make their heals more significant in a tough spot. So what do you think of these builds, these ideas? Do you think it would be hilarious to make gear sets specifically to optimize helping other players, regardless of whether they get a bit silly, regardless of whether it might be a bit excessive for most situations? And additionally, if you were to make a gear set like this, would you do it like I did it? Would you do it differently? Please do let me know in the comments. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, as a result of simply not having other options, the actual best in slot sets for tanks in the current raid tier as of right now includes 2 pieces of equipment with tenacity on it. In fact, both of them are crit tenacity or tenacity crit. One of them is a ring, so the lack of options makes more sense, but the other is the chest piece, because the other option for chest pieces has determination tenacity, meaning tanks have no ability to not have tenacity on their best in slot sets.